Welcome back.
Welcome back. This is the Entertainment Business Review.
That's right. I'm Jordan.
This is Brian. It's kind of like the Harvard Business Review, but with two entertainment bros.
Just way more entertaining. We're just entertaining people,
And a lot dumber,
you'll figure
too.
it out.
It's entertaining because we're dumber.
That's right. That's right. Although I mean, some of us. I don't know. I think I'm pretty intelligent, but but definitely dumber than the people who do the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%.
Those guys, they know nothing.
Yeah. But see, they're not relatable. You know, we're going to be relatable. It's different.
Yeah.
It's very different. I like our brand.
Mm-hmm. All right, so...
We're going to change the name like 5 times.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Third one.
I got my. I finally got my Nicolas Cage. It says, "You're my national treasure." You can get that in there.
Nicolas Cage is a national treasure.
He is a national treasure. Anybody that says differently is just wrong. It's not even like an opinion. He's just the greatest person to enter my life personally, but also just generally is an amazing human being. Anybody who agrees can fight me. Disagrees can fight me.
I know you're serious, which makes it so much more funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, this protein shake is great. It's not as cool as your Nicolas Cage cup, but
Yeah, that's fair.
This is more representing me as a person.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Shout out to
MTS.
MTS
Way.
Fitness.
Yeah,
That's right.
sponsor us. Anyways, all right. So big week, huh?
Big freaking week for entertainment.
Yep.
Way bigger than last week, despite the Emmys.
Yeah.
Honestly, way more interesting week.
Yeah, the Emmys wasn't interesting to me at all, to be honest.
It's not for most of the American public.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was Netflix's ratings.
Yeah.
Were you looking out for it?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about 3 things today. We're going to talk about the Netflix ratings. We're going to talk about big merger in the agency world. Most Americans don't really know about this, but within the industry, it's a big deal. ICM and CAA merged. 2 of the biggest agencies are now merging, which kind of is the trend of the industry these days. Yep. So it's interesting how the agency mirrors the business. So we'll get into that. And then the last will be, if any of you have YouTube TV, you probably got some emails over the last few days basically saying that you're not getting NBC channels because of a conflict between the 2 of them.
There's always something about Google in the news where they're just conflicting with somebody else. Yeah, it's every other month.
Dude, the Epic.
Pretty much.
No, that's Apple. Yeah. Something.
Yeah, those tech guys are always the targets now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what's going on with Netflix? Give me the cliff notes.
All right. So there's a big conference. There was a big conference this week that we were not invited to, but I'm sure next year we'll get invited to it.
Yep.
I forget what it is. I think it's The Wrap that hosts, but they're getting really good people. They got a lot. They got Scott Stuber. They got Ted Sarandos. They got a lot of very high. They got Jason Kilar, who's the CEO of Warner Media. Who said he was very disappointed. He's probably going to get fired, which is funny.
Yeah. He's already on his way out, though, right? So
yeah, and people know. And I think the reporter actually asked him, like straight up, like, "So you're probably leaving?"
so Jason,
like
that's fired next month.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go?
Which is a bummer because he's actually done a pretty good job with HBO Max, despite the product being annoying. From a content perspective, and the day and date release, I don't know, it's debatable as a success, but.
Not to derail too much, but from what I hear in folks in Warner, there's like 2 camps. There's those who are like Hollywood traditionalists who thought that whatever Jason was doing was too disruptive.
Yeah.
And there's those who were, I'd say, in the 40 and belows who were like, oh man, he's really changing shit up, and we kind of like it because you have like these old Hollywood guys sitting in their positions for decades, and then now someone's coming in and fucking shit up, and they're like, yeah, we're here for it because it's so different.
Yeah, I think the right answer is in the middle. I think that's the thing.
As is most things.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends.
Yeah, so we can talk about that a little bit later, but let's focus on Netflix. So we were ranting in the last. I was ranting in the last episode that that. It was annoying that Netflix doesn't really report data, because I think it's bad for them and they know the data, but it's bad for their creatives because they're not really understanding what audiences are liking, what they're liking about their shows. And so it's bad for the people who make the shows, but it's also bad for audiences because they don't know what's popular. And yes, Netflix has like a top 10. They have all this, they have the algorithm that, let's be honest, nobody trusts. So I was kind of ranting. I was like, they should release more data because it's actually better for everybody involved. And they're probably going to be leaders. And lo and behold, Ted Sarandos whipped out his dick at this thing. And
literally, yes, it was
pretty
all there.
much. He had some spicy comments that we'll get into. But I'll talk about two things. So the first thing is that he released the list of the top 10 series and the top 10 films that have come out on Netflix. They're basically their most popular. I'm sure they're excluding anything that's not exclusively Netflix because the fact The Office is there is BS. So it's kind of a lie. But
right.
But we'll put the stats up here. And so the big thing for me is two things. First, we need to understand that the stats are based on, I think, people watching, at least for the accounts. So they do it.
2 minutes of a show is considered they watched it.
Yeah.
They engaged with the show.
Yes. So they released both the viewing hours and they've reviewed the accounts that have watched it. So they're basically measuring popularity based on like the total consumption and like how many unique accounts watched it.
Okay.
So a couple caveats. So the big thing for me, well, one small one and then a big one. So the small thing for me is, and this has always been my complaint, is they're artificially boosting their figures because the number of accounts that watch at least 2 minutes of that title in the first 28 days is a ridiculous thing to measure.
Yeah. Even if you watch something for 2 minutes, I was like, oh, this fucking sucks. That counts as a view. And they're like, oh, this person engaged with it. Great. Checkbox.
Right. Like the fact that I am a part of the 76 million accounts that watch The Witcher, despite the fact that I watched 3 episodes and then quit because I didn't like it. So it's like, come on. All right. You're manipulating the numbers a little bit.
It makes you question, though, like, do they measure the quality of these engagements or these views? Like, how do they look at that? Because
I bet they do internally. I bet they do.
Like, a view is not all views are born equal, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So how do they actually look at it?
I bet internally they do, and I think they said this actually at this conference for Bridgerton, that a significant percentage of the people who watched it actually finished. So that's important. Like that's a really important measure.
Yeah.
So that like is actually really impressive. So I'm sure internally they do, but when they're reporting it publicly, they're still gonna.
For Wall Street, it's a different number altogether.
Yeah, they're not telling Wall Street.
Okay.
So which is fine. Every company does this. Every company boosts their numbers. So that's all right. The second one is and this is the big one for me, is if you look at the viewership, it's a fuck ton of hours. I mean, you're looking at 600 for Bridgerton, which is their biggest one. That's 625 million hours. That's insane. That's an insane amount of total viewership of that show, which makes you question, with that much viewership globally, how is that not even getting like it culturally? It barely made like a drop in the water, like when it was released, and even continuously. I maybe saw a few tweets. I had like 1 or 2 friends, but yeah, it's pretty good, and that was it.
You're talking about the cultural impact.
Yeah,
like the splash that it made.
Yeah, so I want to get your thoughts on this. Is basically I saw this and my initial reaction was, these are insane numbers.
You're basically saying
so
no way.
So many people. Yeah. Well, no, I'm not actually saying no way. I'm actually more saying like, is the culture of television and movie consumption now, because it's so much. It's you're watching it at home by yourself a lot of the time, so there's no communal watching, and there's so much content now that the impact culturally of individual TV shows or movies are much less than they used to.
Yeah.
So it's not
100%.
like even a Netflix fault. It's just like the culture has now been in this oversaturation where nothing really breaks through.
I think that's the issue, right? So if you're binge watching something on your own, then it's not necessarily something that someone else watched at the same time. So is there a dialogue between the two, or is this a guilty pleasure that you're just going to binge before you go to bed, or like when you're on the toilet?
Which is most shows probably, know?
Yeah. I think the standard for like cultural impact is much higher now, right? Because there's so much isolated viewing. So, I mean, at the same time, I will like to play devil's advocate. I will say it's going to be harder and harder to see a congruence of the number of hours viewed and like the cultural impact. There's very few of those that cross nowadays.
Which is interesting. Like I think that's a problem for the industry because culturally they're not as relevant. Like when you had a big TV show like Friends or Seinfeld, or you had a big movie come out in the box office, like, and to be fair, Bird Box actually when it came out, people were talking a good amount about.
Yeah. And there were memes made from it, so that's good.
Yeah, there were a lot of memes. Like, I'll give
Yeah.
Bird Box a little bit of credit for that, but otherwise, if you look at all these movies, like the cultural impact of these movies was very minimal. I mean, the only one that you can kind of compare is The Irishman, but that was really only because of Scorsese.
Right.
But
Right.
frankly, a lot of people watched that movie and were like, I'm not watching, was it 3.5 hours of old people, just like another
Yeah.
gangster movie that is literally the same thing Scorsese always makes.
So what? How did the street react to those numbers then? Like, what was the chatter about that?
You know, it's good. I don't actually know. I haven't actually looked too much into it. It's all positive. The thing with Hollywood is I don't know how graphic I can get with YouTube, but they're sucking on something of Netflix's. Like nobody is hopping off. I don't know. Well, actually, I could be wrong. Hollywood is actually pretty critical of Netflix to a certain extent until they start working there. Wall Street, though, just thinks Netflix is like the bread and butter, like the perfect industry, like they're going to be the future no matter what.
I saw something about this. So Wall Street rewards the companies that throw a lot of money into like content investments and product development, all that kind of thing. But there's this impression that Hollywood has that like Netflix's quality has decreased over time. And I don't know if that's true. Like I just think that they have a lot of misses, but there is some quality in there. But at the same time, the quality of other platforms are also starting to increase. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like Netflix's stuff is decreasing over time. So I think there's a little bit of that too. But I think you're right. Like it's kind of a letdown in my opinion. Like the release that they had and the numbers they had, it's like it's a pat on the back, but I don't think there's anything substantial.
Yeah, the only thing for me it was the big viewing, but yeah, they're just not as impactful.
Yeah.
Which I think what is going to be the topic of conversation moving forward is going to be like how much of this is Netflix's fault versus just the environment for television and movies now. There's just so much content that it's tough to break out, and I think that's bad for the industry. Yeah. I think it's really bad for the industry. You want these breakouts that everybody talks about and that maintains its staying culture. Yeah, because like if you don't have that cultural relevance and everyone's watching different stuff, people like doing what their friends are doing. Like that's what entertainment as just a leisurely time is usually because you want to escape and you want to hang out. You want like to hang out with friends. You want excuses to hang out with like people to have communal experiences. So, if movies and television stop becoming part of the cultural conversation, I think that's really bad for the industry. I think it's also kind of bad for society overall.
The end of storytelling, yeah.
Yeah, because if storytelling dies, or it's just not as important, what's left? Yeah. Like social media, like just short videos.
Well, some of the stuff that is on Netflix that's super popular are like those dumb
reality TV. Oh, I fucking love reality TV though.
Yeah, no, it's great, but that's what's capturing most people's attention. It's not necessarily the deep storytelling type of long form stuff that that used to capture the attention of the mainstream, right?
Yeah. And the big thing about reality TV is a lot of people watch that with their friends, and that's huge, right? Because you love shitting on certain characters with your friends. Yeah. So that's why Netflix has leaned heavily into reality, but also HBO came out with F-Boy Island, I think.
Yeah, which is great.
Have you watched it? I wanted to watch it with Nikki Glaser. I love her.
Everyone that I've talked to loves it too. And
really?
It was actually developed by one of our classmates at.
Erica's roommate, right? Yeah. Probably shouldn't say names, but whatever.
But I mean, speaking of things that are bad for the industry.
All right. Yeah.
I think
let's pivot.
Yeah. So the next topic. So CAA and ICM merging or announcing a deal to merge, right? So a lot of the time when they announce the merger, it's not necessarily gone through, right? It has to go through all the regulatory approvals and who knows what will happen. And they didn't even disclose a price yet. But I was looking very briefly at the research, but the number of clients that they're bringing together is something like 5,000 plus another 5,000. And then when you look at the top 8 or so agencies, there's about like 30,000 something like high profile clients. So you're looking at a huge piece of that market.
Give me the context here. So what's the size comparison to the other bigs? So how big is ICM compared to all the what are the numbers? Is CAA is the biggest, right?
Yeah, I mean CAA is the big boy, but I think they're on the same scale.
Okay,
so
it's
combining
two
the two
big
of
players,
these, two large players. So I can't imagine that the regulators will not have an issue with this.
Right, because CAA was already huge, and now they're buying another huge one?
Yeah.
So, okay.
There's a piece of me that thinks that there will be conditions. If they are going to pass this, you're going to have to, spin off, your sporting arm or something, or spin off something else in order for it to go through. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the reason why they're doing it is that TPG, which owns CAA, is trying to go public with CAA. And so they think that by acquiring ICM, they're going to have enough scale to IPO and take advantage of it. But when you combine this whole pool together, I think there's two things that are bad. One, these are managers and agents that all have egos, right? That are all coming together. What happens when you have a merger and acquisition between two large companies?
Egos clashing.
You get rid of the fat. You trim the fat, right? So there's going to be egos clashing 100%.
Yeah.
And at the same time, now there's a huge pool of clients. So one of the problems was your agency, you're supposed to represent your clients equally.
Yeah.
But now that you have access to so many more, how do you know that you're going to get the attention from the company nowadays? The power to the agencies themselves are way outweighed now, in my opinion. So I don't know if this is going to be a good thing. It's a big deal.
Now, when you say it's a good thing, do you good thing to who?
Good thing to talent. I tend to lean towards being talent friendly.
Yeah,
right? Because the ones that you're concerned about, I'm not talking about the guys who are going to make millions and millions of dollars from each project that they do.
Yeah.
But the little guys that need attention as well, that are up and coming and just need a break for something.
Well,
right?
But realistically, this agency is not going to represent the little guy. They're going to represent the big players.
That's a good point.
So if anything, it might be worse for the little guy because the little guy won't be able to sign with these agencies because they're so big until they're big, which. I'm curious.
They might not be able to sign because they're not big enough. And even if they do, they become a drop in a large sea, right?
Yeah.
So either way, not a big fan of this. We'll see how it plays out. I think a lot of people are very curious to see how the regulators are going to respond, but also the other agencies now, right? So now they're all probably thinking oh, shit, there's an even larger fish that we have to compete with.
Right.
So I mean, we'll see what happens. I tend to believe that in 6 months they're going to be all right, there's going to be restrictions and there's going to be conditions that you have to meet.
Yeah. So they're currently going under. So this DOJ is looking at this. Okay. Because what I'm curious,
it has to go through the regulatory approvals.
Right. So what I'm curious about with this is how this works. I do look at the talent and I wonder, is this good for talent? Because right, they're a small drop in the bucket, so it's huge. But you do have, I guess it's two things. Now you have more leverage going against the studios, right? Because everybody's merging on the studio side. So it kind of makes sense the agencies kind of need the power to go against the studio. Although, frankly, the studios love talent right now, so I don't know if you really need a big agency to back you up. But also another big thing is now if the less players get, the less agencies are fighting for clients. So I wonder, because if you watch Entourage, there was constantly battling between the agencies to get their clients.
Yeah.
So if an artist was not happy with their agency, they could be I'm going to look at UTA, or I'm going to look at
There's one less
WME.
competitor that they can use as leverage. Yeah.
Right. So now you have this issue where you could have talent who maybe they don't like this conglomerate, maybe they don't like maybe the agent touched them inappropriately, because that happens. And CAA says, yeah, go for it. Good luck. We're the biggest agency by far.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good for your career if you leave. So that's also kind of a concern for me on the talent side.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And then you have to think about, are they just merging just to merge, or are they also thinking about getting, because WME is also getting to other businesses. They're actually trying to produce their own content. They have Endeavor content, and they're also in the UFC. They have an investment in UFC. Do you know if CAA, ICM are getting into that?
They each have a huge portfolio of different kinds of clients, right? So it's film, TV, sports, other personalities, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is a scale play. That's what I'm understanding it to be. I mean, but if they IPO, right, then they have all these funds flowing in. What's stopping them from doing their original content or anything like that? Like, I mean, there's got to be a long-term play there. Like, you don't just raise money in the equity markets for no reason, right? There's got to be something.
Right, they got to be doing something.
Yeah, but for now, it's probably just getting rid of one competitor so that they can, get more scale.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like they will compete better with like Netflix's and Amazon and Apple, which you kind of want the agencies and the studios to be on a level playing field, right? Like if the talent, if a talent is, they're not Shonda Rhimes, and they're going to Netflix is like, we're Netflix. But if they have the backing of a real big agency, a real big agency can say, well, we represent Shonda, and if you fuck this client, like we're gonna fuck you with Shonda. So that could help too, right?
Yeah.
So I guess there's kind of an in between. With the content thing is interesting too because there have been issues in the past. And I don't know how WME has gone away with this, but of an innate conflict of interest too. When an agency produces content, presumably they could be working against their client's interests in a certain way to like.
Yeah,
that the client works with their content thing rather than getting a good deal for a production studio.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think there's rules, and that's why strikes happen, right? Because then they're basically saying that this is unfair treatment, and they're not getting the right attention that they need, and so let's band together and strike, and that's what causes all of this.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Those are existing agency type problems, and I've long said that model is ripe for disrupting the agency manager model.
Yeah, 100%. All right, cool. All right, so next topic.
This is a big one.
So YouTube TV and NBC. This is a tale as old as cable.
Yeah, I guess we should say NBC's owner, right? Because I think this is Comcast pushing it. Yeah,
I'm sure it's Comcast. So what's happened is, to give you a little context. So most of you probably know what YouTube TV is. It's basically the alternative for if you don't want cable, which is anybody under the age of 40, maybe even older at this point. You don't want somebody coming and putting cable, but you can just go online and get the channels online. And there's a couple major players. It's really Sling, YouTube TV, and Hulu plus Live.
Those are the virtual MVPDs.
Yeah, it's vMVPDs, but for normal people, it's just like online cable.
Yeah, online cable.
That's all, right. Yeah, that's all you really need to know. So what ended up happening, and this is with cable, this is what happens in cable is, let's say, Disney has Disney Channel, they have all of their channels, ABC, ESPN, and they'll basically go to, back in cable days, it was you go to Spectrum and you say, you're going to give us a percentage of what consumers pay you for cable, we get a certain percentage of that because we're giving you our channels, we're giving you content. So they do this with the video guys too. And there's been a standard deal that's been in process that's continuously gone up. Like YouTube TV used to be like $40 and now it's like 65 because the networks are boosting their prices.
Yeah, and the average prices have continued to go up as the value of the cable channels continues to drop.
Right. It's offsetting the decrease in cable. Yeah. So now they're going to YouTube TV and saying, well, we're losing all this cable money, we're going to take it from you, which is fair. That's business. But so the big story is, and this happened on cable all the time, was there was disagreements on the distribution deal between NBC and Google. And this one, it seems that I'll give you what actually happened, and then my take on it is so NBC, according to Lightshed Partners, basically said, we want you to, with YouTube, we want you to bundle it with Peacock, which costs like $5, maybe $10 for the premium.
There's the free ad supported, then there's like $5.99
free ad supported
or something without ads, and there's like premium $9.99 or something like that. There's 3 tiers, I think.
Yes. They basically said, we want you to provide Peacock with YouTube TV. You're going to charge consumers the same price, but you're going to pay us to have Peacock and our channels. So otherwise, you don't get our channels. So your consumers are going to be screwed. They're not going to get our beloved channels.
The beloved NBC channels.
Yeah, the beloved NBC channels that everybody loves.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find the ones that they actually. I wish I had. It was like
We're trying to threaten
Telemundo.
it. Yeah. Damn, what am I gonna do without my Telemundo?
Yeah. So here's two things that I get from this. The first thing is this is a clear desperation attempt from Comcast because they are clearly sucking with Peacock. I don't even think they've released really clearly like what Peacock's subscriber numbers are. Like they've said, I think they've given the subscriber numbers, but that doesn't include people who like get it for free with certain packages.
Yeah, it's completely conflated.
Yeah.
There's no way to calculate, or they're not going to give a true, accurate representation what their average revenue per user is going to be because they have a whole bunch of free users, right?
It's probably like $4.
Yeah,
like,
do they contribute to the denominator or not? They have to, right? Which means
they do.
It's way lower.
It's super low. It's super. They have to contribute to the denominator. Or that would be. Yeah, that wouldn't be an accurate measurement. So, so this is desperate. So this is basically Comcast, NBC saying we are desperate without saying that we are desperate.
Well, they also, I mean, it's desperate, but it's interesting because they think that they can use that as leverage. Like it's almost like
that was going to be my second point.
Yeah, like where's that ego coming from?
So
they can do this,
right? So my second point is that they think they have more leverage than Google and YouTube because obviously we can easily switch to Hulu if we wanted to, and where they have the channels, and that consumers love NBC channels so much that it's going to piss them off. So Google's basically taken them on their bluff, and it's interesting. They've actually both gone on campaigns to their consumers to pitch their side of it, which is interesting. Like I got emails from NBC and I also got emails from YouTube.
Yeah.
Which was NBC basically came out and said, look at all these channels you're gonna miss out because of YouTube. But don't worry, you can get Peacock or you can switch. And then I also got one from YouTube, and YouTube's is interesting. YouTube's is because we expect this is gonna happen. We're sorry that's happening. We're gonna decrease the price by $10. You can buy Peacock as an add-on if you want to. So that's fine, but we're going to decrease the price to $10. And if you want to quit, that's fine. Well, we're going to save all your like if you recorded anything on YouTube TV, you can cancel. We'll save that stuff for you and wait for you to come back. So it's interesting. It's interesting in the fact that like we've gone full reversal when cable companies never gave a crap about the consumer. They're like, oh, $120. Yeah, good luck getting a different price. Oh, wait, we're the only option. So, and now, like, YouTube and these platforms, like, please stay with us. So it's kind of cool that, like, the power has shifted to the consumer. But, yeah, it's interesting because this has kind of been an argument, and I'm curious on your opinion on this. Like, this has been the argument with Roku had this issue with a different with HBO. I think HBO Max wasn't on Roku for a long time.
So there's carrier and content provider issue and contract conflicts all the time. Like these battles are happening, and ultimately the loser is the consumer because they don't get access to the content that they want, while mommy and daddy are fighting it out and trying to figure things out. So ultimately, what happens? Like so in the case of Roku and YouTube TV, they had the exact same dispute like almost a year ago where Google wanted more information from the Roku users.
Right.
But then Roku's like, no. And so they just let that contract
lapse.
And so YouTube TV was no longer on Roku. And that ultimately hurts Roku's consumers and YouTube's consumers who can no longer watch it through their Roku devices. So like ultimately it just hurts the consumer because mommy and daddy are fighting.
Yeah. Fascinating enough, 2 points to that. Fascinating enough, is that still a problem?
They haven't resolved it, no.
So what's interesting is I can watch YouTube TV on my Roku.
Yeah, if you had it back then, yeah.
No, I can watch now. I just have to log in. I have to go onto the YouTube app and then look at YouTube TV through the YouTube app.
Right.
So Roku's kind of locked out of. So it actually is really not that much of an inconvenience for me.
Yeah.
So Roku's kind of just getting screwed.
Yeah. So YouTube still exists as its own, as a standalone app. And I guess what they did was they skirted around it.
They skirted around Roku.
By making the live component or the channel component accessible through the app
Yep.
Even though it's on the YouTube.
Yep. And Roku can't really do anything about it because they could say, okay, we're also going to get rid of YouTube, but man, that's bad for consumers will not buy Roku if you can't get YouTube on your TV.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch YouTube that much on my TV, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So
for me, the main takeaway from this is that like Comcast really needs to do something about Peacock. Like there's like, they can't just keep meandering about with low subscriber numbers because there's a cost. There's a fixed cost to operating these services, and they're clearly not going to be able to make that up. I wonder if they're even profitable.
I think they're going to be a loser.
Unit,
I think Peacock's done. I don't think there's anything they can do to save Peacock. I think they got to cut their losses.
Yeah, same.
I don't know
They've
how
got to be
they
looking
recover.
for a buyer or something, right?
They could. I mean, Comcast could do a spinoff like AT&T did, and like give Universal. Maybe they merge with Viacom. But even then, they still don't really have the scale. Like Paramount Plus and Peacock are people talk about they're going to be losers. I can't imagine how they couldn't be. You know?
Well, there's those mega SVODs that are going to survive just because they're huge conglomerates. So they're going to rob Peter to pay Paul and keep those supported and continue to exist.
Yep.
But their quality and people vote with their dollars, right? So the fact that there's not that many subscribers already tells you that people aren't going to shell out the money just to watch The Office.
No.
It's like the only thing that people watch on there.
No, because people were like, "Oh, I watched it 15 times. I'm good."
Yeah.
Like
I watched it at least 20 times when it was still on Netflix.
So this brings, I guess, a broader, interesting thought that I've had is, who do you think has the most power? And like within these debates, and obviously it's nuanced, right? With its Netflix comes in with different negotiating power. Like if it was fighting NBC, right? I mean, sorry, if it was fighting Roku. But and Netflix is fighting Google, so it's interesting because it's kind of like a power play with these guys now.
Yeah. Whoever has
it's interesting.
The person that has the most eyeballs or subscribers has the most power. So if the distribution channel has the highest amount of subscribers, then they're most valuable to the content providers. But if the content providers, let's say like Warner has more subscribers on HBO Max, and they don't need a distribution channel via Roku or something. So really, it depends on like who has the most attention.
Yeah,
holds it out, and that I know that's kind of wishy-washy, but that's like
the
only way that you can quantify that. But yeah, I mean, there's other like what's the word I'm looking for? Like ancillary benefits to
like
having like an
factors
aggregator. Like for example, like Roku is like a more seamless platform. But for the most part, it's whoever has more to offer in the situation. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see like if Amazon or Apple start getting more into hardware. And maybe they try to. I always thought Google is going to be the aggregator. They're coming out with Google TV, right?
Yeah, they're making a huge play in that space.
So I think they have the best shot. Which man, buy Google if that happens because I think they're going to dominate the market.
So.
And they already have so much data already.
Yeah, Roku still has first mover advantage, but if Google can figure it out, then they can, they can be a big problem for Roku in the future.
And that's why I think Roku's strategy is good in the fact they're doing the Roku channel. They're trying to, they know that their tech is good. But the thing is that the tech is not going to keep them there because Google or Amazon can come in and produce just as good content. I mean, just as good hardware, if not better hardware, which is why I like the idea of them doing like their TV. They're going into original content.
Yep.
They have the Roku channel.
Yeah.
That's smart if they want to stay in the game. That's kind of how they have to do it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, they have smart people at the helm, so I'm pretty bullish on Roku in general.
Yeah, former Netflix guys, right?
Yep.
Which is interesting because Netflix they actually asked. I'm following like the Twitter thread on somebody who was attending, and they asked Ted Sarandos about hardware, and he said they're not interested. So they're still not interested in hardware.
That's why they developed it together, but they never fully went into the hardware.
And those guys were like, all right, we'll make Roku.
Yep.
Which is cool.
Yep.
And last thing before we get into our recommendations, I wanted to mention that I'm remembering now, and you can quote me on this. Ted Sarandos sometimes says things that I don't actually think he believes, but is just promoting his business, which I totally respect, but he's just lying, which is
through his teeth.
Right. The
for
first
Wall
one
Street.
was that Enola Holmes had the impact of a $1 billion movie, which is stupid. But then also, and there's no way he believes that. But then there's also, he came out at this and said that the Netflix algorithm is better at recommending shows to you than your friends. I so hard disagree with that.
Yeah, I categorically
disagree with that. Like, there's just no way you trust your friends when some friend tells you that you, assuming you like this friend, they say, I like this show, I think you'll like it. You are way more likely to watch that show than if you see Netflix say like, hey, you watched, this show, you'll probably like this show. And it's there's two reasons for that. It's first, you trust a person over an algorithm. That's just a fact. That's always going to be the case.
Human nature.
Yeah. It's human nature. That's always going to be what happens. And then the second thing, there's three things. The second thing is that you want to watch what your friends watch. Like, you guys want to have something to talk about. It connects you with your friends. So you're always going to want to watch something more that your friends are watching, just so you can have a discussion. You have something to talk about, your friends and family. So you want to be a part of that community. It creates a community. And then lastly, again, like, the algorithm is going to recommend content that you've watched previously, when the reality is that, yes, if it's like it's so hard to be like, oh, you watched 2 reality TV shows? Let me recommend you another one. That's cool. However, a lot of people don't know what they like until they see it, or they don't know what they want next until they see it.
Yep.
Like, the Squid Game thing is the big story now, and it's like some weird, like, dystopian game thing. Nobody was like, you know what I could really want right now? And by the way,
a show called Squid Game.
Yeah, a show called Squid Game from South Korea that's about people dying in a game. And by the way, Netflix said, like, they didn't see this coming. So again, like, content is not like a long form storytelling. It's just the data. You can't use data to predict what's going to be successful in art. It's art,
or at least the
the
impact is limited versus what people think.
Right.
And I mean, one good example is I started watching True Detective.
Did you for season 1?
Yep.
Hell yeah,
it's good, man. Woody Harrelson.
It's nuts, dude. The two of them, and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Unreal cast, unreal duo.
It's weird seeing Matthew McConaughey, and I haven't gotten too far into it yet, but it's weird seeing Matthew McConaughey in such kind of like a weirdo role.
He's weird, yeah.
Yeah,
he's a weird dude.
Yeah, it's kind of.
It's cool though. I really respect him for like really pushing the boundaries, because he got stuck in like rom-coms, and he really pushed out of that. Like, as an actor, I respect the crap out of that.
Yeah. I'm excited for it, but that was a good recommendation.
Yeah. All right, we'll finish with our recommendations here. So True Detective. Anything else you're watching?
I'm gonna try to finish that one. No, nothing new.
Nothing new?
Yeah.
So I've been watching Dave on Hulu.
Oh, the Hulu one, the FX one.
Yeah. I watched the first season and I loved it, and so I'm watching the second one now, and that one's really good. I like that. Still haven't seen Free Guy. I said that every episode. I'm gonna see it this weekend. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be hungover on Sunday. I'm gonna do it.
Before it leaves the theater.
I know. I'm nervous. I'm actually nervous. It's gonna be gone. So I want to see it in theaters. Like, I don't really want to.
What is the current Free Guy rating? If it's good enough for.
And we can talk about this later, but dynamic pricing
80%.
would be great. Dynamic pricing would be great, where like it's been out for like 6 weeks. If they cut the price in half, I'd be so much more likely to go. I would have probably already gone.
Or alternatively, just get the AMC stubs and just watch it as many times as your heart desires.
That's true. I've debated getting that, but I feel like I'll go to the movies too often. Yeah.
As is my case.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that one, and then I think Bond's coming out soon.
Yeah. When is Bond coming out? Bond is coming out. Dune's coming out. Venom's coming out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's a good month.
So many good movies.
It's a good month.
Yeah. James Bond's coming out in 2 weeks. When is Venom coming out?
I think soon. A week.
Are they both coming out on the same weekend? No.
It's got to be.
They're not going to compete against each other.
Venom release date.
Oh yeah, this weekend. This
weekend.
Fuck. I got a lot of movies to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has good reviews, but I like the first one, so screw it.
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
All right, guys. That's it for the Entertainment Business Review this week. We'll see you next time.
Peace.